I don't have that mental block of like, oh, I got to meet with my boss and explain the things that I've done this week because I'm responsible for them. No, it's me. It's me and me. Oh, let me call my boss. Can I get today off? Yep, you're off today, right? That's the truth of it, right? When I make friends, I do this with my friends. Like, can you go?
My
can
boss
you do
is
this
really
on
on my
Friday?
ass right now.
But my buddies are like, we're hanging out. Like, hey, can you message your? Can you tell us if you can do this on Friday? I go, hey, can you get today off? Oh wait, I have Friday off now. Okay, cool. Like that's the.
All right, man. Ben, thanks for coming on the pod, dude. We had a little bit of a pre-chat right before this episode, and we realized we were getting lost in the conversation, and we said, "Oh, we gotta start the pod."
I think it's a good time to start it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, dude, so excited to have you on the pod. We've been saving you, actually, because when we launched the podcast, we were like, hey, could we have you on the pod? And then we realized, hey, let's get a little bit of traction first. Let's get our training wheels off, and then we're ready for the big guns. So I think we're here. I think we're ready to roll. And
I don't know if I'd like to be called the big gun. I feel like you guys are putting the expectation all the way up here, and then I hope I deliver for it. But I appreciate it. I hope I can live up to the expectations too.
Well, that's good. I think it's a shared responsibility, but we like to keep the pressure on. So in line with that, I think we're going to go ahead and start off the episode with a little story, and we're going to flash back to 2022. This is a sort of a memory I have of us sitting together at a table at a hotel in Colorado at a HackerOne live hacking event. Yep. And I think this was a pretty rough time period in your life, and you and I were collaborating together and talking about, how to approach this target, and you were feeling a lot of insecurity and not confidence in the bug bounty journey, which is kind of crazy to me because I got into bug bounty watching your videos and seeing your content, and so I was glad to be able to be there for that time. But then I look back at that, and then I look at now, which is years later, having just done a 500K year in bug bounty, and I just wonder about that journey. So I was wondering if you could take us back to that spot and then bring us forward to today.
Yeah, so I mean, the table you were talking about, it was me. So you and I were working on some projects in the past, non-hacking related, and then I kind of ghosted you, and then when we got in person, I was like, okay, I owe this guy an apology. So I was like, hey, sorry, I had to ghost you guys, and there was context to it, and I think at the time I was actually on the come out of that entire problem, so a lot of people know this. I was married for a while, and then before COVID happened, I was really struggling with like depression, anxiety, a lot of different issues. And then in 2020 I went through a divorce, and actually like Joel, I think, was one of the first people that found out about the breakup. It was just I think I found out about some stuff in his life, and then I messaged him. I was like, hey, I heard you're going through some stuff and Christmas is coming up, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm not going back home, I'm gonna be in my area. I was like, do you want to come hang out with me? We can just hang out, and like, I just got a puppy, you want to come meet my new dog? And he came up, and funny enough, we put some furniture together that we broke, and then I sent it back to the manufacturer. We don't have to talk about that, but I think before I can talk about that, though, there is a little bit to talk about the what got me to 2022, where you and I sat at that table.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
I kind of told you about it, right? So about 2018, I want to say 2018, 2019 is when I got into content creation. I started with my live stream. This is when like the first live recon happened. I didn't have this beautiful office. I had a bunch of like Batman posters in the background because it was, but
getting banned from Twitch.
Getting banned from Twitch. Yeah. A lot of like different crazy stuff that happened. And, the big thing with, that I also applaud you guys for doing is the consistency when it comes down to creating content. You guys are, pushing out a podcast once a week. You're doing these calls. I just saw you guys doing a prep call, before the podcast. I'm sure you guys spent hours before it. I want to say for every hour of content that you're making, you're putting into about 5 hours of work, at least minimum, right? So now
Yeah.
imagine that I'm doing 4 days of streams a week. I was streaming Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
No way.
And this is this is before we were stuck. This is before we were told we have to stay at home on Friday, Saturday, Sundays because of COVID, right? So I wasn't going out on Fridays in the morning. I wasn't going out Friday nights because I had to stream on Saturdays. I wasn't going out Saturday nights because I had to stream on Sundays, and I couldn't go do stuff with family on Sunday mornings because I had to stream. And when you do that and you're away from family, you're away from doing the things that you love, and you have family members around you that miss you, friends that don't see you, everyone was like, oh, we can't see you this weekend because you have to stream, right? That was the go-to with me. So I built up a lot of like pressure on the external people in my life that they wanted to see me and I couldn't see them. So that puts like a lot of pressure. I couldn't travel anymore.
Yeah.
There's all these things, right?
So I want to pause you. Go ahead, Joel. Yeah.
Well, we both have so many questions
about this. One at a time.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I have a friend who I know personally. He was not a streamer and he transitioned into now full-time streaming. He's been doing it for about a year. And I've noticed this. I don't know how much it's affected him, but I was curious like what it felt like in the moment for you, because I think like in the moment it's very easy to just sort of be like, I'm growing, like things are going really well for this. I'm putting a lot of time and effort into this. Like it's working. I'm just going to keep doing that. And it's kind of easy to sort of justify the reasons for why the other aspects of your life sort of start to fall apart. What was it like from your perspective, like going into, like in hindsight, it's easy to see, like, you know, okay, I'm spending too much time and energy on that. I probably should have focused on family, but like in the moment, what was it like from the inside?
So the thing with me is I have a very addictive personality that I can control. I can't control when it comes down to like the things that I enjoy doing. Like I can control when it comes to like drinking and partying and things. I can control that part. But when it comes down to like hacking, you know, when you get that high of like success that you're getting, whether it's content, bug bounties, you know, whatever it is they're doing, that is the time that I can't control it at all. So at first it was bug bounties. You know, I was working full time. I was doing bug bounties, and I took a break. I was like, okay, now I want to do content. But when you're hitting success, dude, it's hard to say no. It's hard to take a break.
Yeah.
Because, you know, with hacking, the thing that I really struggled with was every time I went out to hang out with my friends, that was, you know, 6 hours of going out. And then if I went out drinking, 3 hours of being hungover in the morning, that's about a 9 hour of time that I lost that I could have made making bounties, right? Now, if I'm streaming every day, if I miss one day, people are quick to forget you when you stop making content. Yeah. You know, it's very hard to say no to doing things, and that's just one aspect of content that I've just talked about. There's more to, you know, how it changes your life, but just from a perspective like success, it is really hard to say no when your growth is like, it's not even like slowly going up. It was just huge. I had a huge growth with Twitch. I think I got like 10 to 15,000 followers within a year. Wow. And I had a huge community. I would tweet out, you know, random shit on Twitter and it would get a lot of attention, and I was just like, holy crap, this is becoming real. Like people actually like, and with dude, Twitch has one of the most engaged communities. It is insane how people can, you know, support you, have people interact with you. They want to like be a part of your community. I've never seen it like that. And then when you come into that, it's just hard to give up. It's hard to like let go, right? Yeah. So it just, you know, taking a pause, you know, there was times when I would take like HackerOne would say, hey, we're doing the H1415, for example, you got to come to San Francisco. I would take a weekend off, but the whole time in my brain, I'm going, please don't drop my numbers when I go back next week. Please, you know, I hope my regulars come back. I hope my regular viewers come back, or at least I get the engagement. Yeah. So it's really hard to say no to it. But the other thing that comes with content when you're doing streams is you're showing the authentic version of yourself. You cannot hide who you are when you're doing a stream. And that comes when you're doing technical content. It's harder. When I don't know a topic on stream, guess what? I'm going to look it up. Those mistakes you made that you're inefficient, everybody sees it and everybody judges you. That's what people say. You don't want to meet your heroes. Well, a lot of people got to meet the hero.
It's vulnerable too, you know. Like you're going on there, and you know that that's going to happen time and time again. All of us know, even the pros, that we have to, you know, still Google how to write a markdown link or like, you know, get the syntax right in a specific thing. Though, so
people don't see it that way. People thought, you know, I was getting. Some top hackers were like very disappointed in how I was doing things on streams. I had messages of people that I call these elite hackers that I distance myself nowadays. That they're like, oh, this is how you do it. You didn't know how to do it on the stream. And I was like, no, I kind of know how to do it, but it's like I'm also teaching things to people. So I was doing a lot of like things in a Google Sheet, for example, because you know people. That was the early days, and I didn't want to jump into Bash right away. And then people were like, "Oh, you don't know how to do basic stuff." And I'm like, "Which one is it? Do I teach people, or do I come up and be the super lead hacker that knows everything?" Right?
Even if
that puts added pressure onto you.
even if you don't, I mean, even if you do it a different way, that's a part of your unique hacker identity too. You know, there's no reason why somebody needs to come and say like, hey, you don't know like literally everything about Bash. What's wrong with you? Because, you know, that knowledge that they spent getting, you know, learning Bash, you've spent somewhere else, right? And then you've got that sort of knowledge trade-off on the other side. And so it's never a good idea. You never like to see people shame other hackers for, you know, lack of knowledge in some areas, because you never know where that knowledge got traded to. Yeah.
I want to answer your original question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, this actually, we had a great discussion about this recently. And Rezo brought up this XKCD called, I think it's like 1 in 10,000 or something. And it's basically, I don't know if this is how real this statistic is or whatever, but it's basically that like every day, like 10,000 adults like learn something like for the first time. And if somebody hasn't heard about something for the first time, then they're 1 in 10,000 like that. They're, you know, they're part of the statistic, and just like, that's okay. Like, that's going to happen. You're going to be part of that someday too, or you already have been. I think the other aspect of it is like, there's so much emphasis put nowadays on like being like a dictionary of things. And like, I can appreciate that to some extent, but I also think it's equally important to be able to like use the resources around you to find things without having to like know it explicitly. And that's like relying on Google, or like relying on your peers or bookmarks or notes or whatever to like help you find things, so that you don't have to, because your brain can only hold so much, right? Like you're gonna have to like start to exchange some knowledge out for other things, and having systems that you can like find that and data in an efficient way is just as important.
And that's one of the things that I think you did great on those streams, Ben, was like equipping people with the knowledge of how to go and get the information, you know, like even if you know, like you were just talking about, even if you don't know off the top of your head, oh, what is this syntax? Well, I'm just going to open the man page. Well, some people didn't know about man page, and now you've just equipped them with that way. And as a mentor to a couple of young hackers, one of the things I'm struggling with right now is, how do I embed in them that confidence that they can go find the technical piece of information they need to solve their problem, you know, without relying on a mentor. And that's one of the best things that you know you can do to equip a mentee, I think. But yeah, sorry. So we got a little off topic. Going back to the question.
The number one thing that I got on my streams always was, it makes me feel good that a pro like this has to look up the most basic concept, and my answer will be like, that's how it's supposed to be. Like,
exactly.
That's how it's supposed to be at all the time, right? And the people that tell you they don't look things up, and I had people on my stream when I did the interviews, they were like, oh, I know this from the back of my head. I'm like, cool, like you're just storing shit in your back of your brain that's you know, you're gonna use once a year. I applaud it, but you know, you learn things as you do it more and more. But I don't want to jump into I don't want to talk too much about the content piece of it, because I know people want to do also technical stuff. But the biggest thing that I came across this bit of a podcast. I wish I knew what podcast it was. I just remember the message from it, that it was you know, when I was early in the days of like creating this brand, and you know, the name or whatever you want to call it, was, if you want to become an online persona, you're given two options. Those two options are, you either have to fully off yourself and unalive yourself of who you are and create this new persona, and you know, be this new person that you can put up the charade, if you want to call it, and become this person that you are online and live it up, you know, every day, day in and day out when you're on camera. Or you have to amplify the crap out of who you are personally. And people are either going to love you for it, or they're going to hate you for it, and you have to be okay with it. And I took the approach of just being myself, and you know, being okay with being who I am. And I know a lot of people that don't like me for it, and I know a lot of people that have actually enjoyed seeing me who I am, seen my growth online, and seen the things that I do. And that was the biggest change that I applied, and it helped a lot with the personality. But I want to kind of, you know, I want to answer your question about like what happened in Denver, but I feel like we'll need to understand the context of what was going on 2018 to 2022 in my life, where I had no social life. I had no, you know, my partner at the time was fed up with it, and I had issues with her at the time too. And, you know, I'm just not spending any time with anybody because I wanted it bad enough. Right. And then get to 2022, COVID happens. And, you know, we're locked in now. I hadn't seen my parents in 5 years. I was supposed to see them. That's not happening anymore. My brother had a kid. I was supposed to go see the baby. That's not happening anymore. We're locked into the house, and there's nothing happening. And on top of it, I'm going through a divorce while everyone's locked in the house. So like, that's the reality of my life at the time. And Luckily, by
Rough, dude.
2022, it's literally when I came out of it. And you know what the really fucked up part about all of it is? Like, I hosted NahamCon, I hosted ActivityCon, I hosted all my streams with a smile on my face, while on the inside there was so many things that were happening that nobody even knew. And when I say Joel was one of the people that knew about it, Joel came to the house and he could see the state that I was in. But when I was streaming, nobody knew, dude. Nobody had a clue about what was happening on the external, like, you know, from the optics of it. Nobody knew. I was still going. I think during ActivityCon, I think that was in September, a month before it, my old boss, Luke, you guys both know Luke, he sat me down and was like, dude, you're not acting like yourself. What is going on? And that was like, you know, 7 months into it. And I was well, since you're asking me, dude, he's like, you're not acting like yourself. You're like, you know, short tempered. That's not who you are. You're very, you know, you're not friendly as you used to be. You're lacking decision making has been like noticeable. Like, because I'm quick to say, this is what we're doing. Like, this is how we're gonna do it. And he's like, what's going on? And I was like, okay, now I gotta tell somebody. So I started with him, then, you know, a couple of coworkers, and then more friends and more, you know, more people.
Yeah. So, you know, at that point you were starting to let some of this out. And I think one of the things that is tempting as a content creator is to not let that vulnerability, you know, be seen, right? Not, you know, put on that facade, put on that happy face, but it does, you know, you got to show up as a human each day to these things, but it'll eat you away, like you were saying. And I'm wondering, you know, in the midst of all this, of these stressors, in the midst of divorce, in the midst of, you know, some depression, in the midst of the pressure of streaming all the time, how did this affect you as a hacker? Because before this, you were really, really, you know, going really hard on all these programs, and you had did we lose him? There we go. Before this, you had been going really hard as a hacker and hacking a lot of programs. But if you're streaming, you know, 4 days a week, and you're not allowed to find vulnerabilities live on the stream, you know, it's mostly just focused on recon. How did this affect your methodology, and how did this affect you as a hacker?
So partially one of the reasons, actually one of the videos I'm going to make soon is about I quit. I was going to say I quit, you know, streaming, and this is why, because people ask me like, when are you coming back? I'm not going to ever go back. I'm never going to go back to doing live recon probably ever again, because when you're doing these like no vulnerability practices every week, what you practice is what becomes your reality. When you're not finding vulnerabilities,
that's what I'm thinking, right? I'm like, oh no.
Especially when it's like recon, and like I'm one of those people that loves like data, man. Like I love looking at these data that I find from companies, and like snooping around a company's infrastructure. It's fun. It's all fun and games, but it doesn't translate to money. So I want to do streams. I'm thinking about what I get back to making streams and all that stuff, but it's not going to be the recon stuff, because I'm not finding vulnerabilities. I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. I've hit this roadblock, and I feel like I know a lot of people that have learned from these streams, but I don't want to keep doing that for the new people. You can go rewatch. I want to maybe do a couple of them and put them on YouTube for people to watch. But it's just, you're not finding vulnerabilities, and that becomes your reality of it. And I kind of want to say, ever since I stopped doing it, I've gotten better at with what I want to do with it as a hacker. But I also don't want to believe that, because I was doing okay when I was doing those streams. It's just I got too comfortable.
Yeah. I think this is a really common pattern, actually, that you see. I mean, I can think of multiple cases within the security industry alone where you've seen this, but people get known for a niche, and they go, okay, this is my niche. And that's them for the next 40 years. And
that's in any industry, right? It's not just
right. Any industry. It's not even just security, right? But like I can think of examples everywhere, including in security, where this happens. And it's really easy, because once you become known for something, when somebody goes, hey, do you know somebody for this thing? Your name's going to come up. And like you have like instant recognition, you have like association with being like a top person within like some certain like pillar or whatever. And like people know your name, people know that you're like known for this thing, but it's really hard. It's really hard to expand the knowledge. So like at a certain point, like, you know, there's another XKCD about learning, but it's like, you know, the learning curve is like
Joel just lives in the XKCDs.
In the beginning, you're learning like or inverse log, whatever. You're learning like a ton, like right in the first, like, you know, a couple months, first year or two, whatever. And then like by year 20, you know, it's like 0.5% over the last like decade, right? And so that same thing is true when you're like focusing on some niche where you're now like an expert in this thing, but there's only so much room for growth for knowledge within that. Like you can maybe do some groundbreaking research, maybe there's some new stuff to expand on, but a lot of it is like marginal gains in overall experience and overall knowledge. And instead, if you just branch out into something new, you start that curve over again. And so the key is what you're doing, right? Which is like push yourself. Don't like stick to what's comfortable. Don't stick to the things that you know, but like take those things, push into new fields that you're not as familiar with, push into new techniques that you're not as familiar with, so that you can keep yourself on your toes and keep yourself from falling into that sort of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I feel like with recon, it's just rabbit hole after rabbit hole, dude. It's like you just find these things you obsess about, and when do you give up? Like, when do you stop, right? So just automate the boring task. If you know how to find some vulnerabilities automatically, make them a freaking cron job and have them just alert you on Discord or alert you on Slack, and become your cash cow and learn other things. It's just, I would be 100% correct. Though once you become, I was becoming like, I was doing stuff with bug bounties, and then I was becoming very big in recon, and I didn't enjoy recon anymore. It's like everyone that I was like, oh, when you're doing live recon again, oh, I love your live recon. Like that's the only thing that a lot of people like knew me for. Where I did a lot of stuff in the web, and I realized with like bug bounties alone, I wasn't making a lot of money from recon. I was making money from finding good stuff, but I wasn't making money from automation, right? I had really good data a lot of time. That people didn't have.
And that brings me back to one of my favorite quotes that we've had on this podcast so far, which was Jason Haddock's episode 12. He said, "The point of recon is to find more apps to hack." And I think that's just a great point, is like at the end of the day, you can do these recon finds and that sort of thing, but the best bang you're going to get for your buck is finding apps and then drilling deep into those apps and finding the bugs. And so and in light of that, there's two areas where we could go from here, both which are related to some content you've released recently, and principles you've been kind of talking about in this content. The first of which is the switch from recon to manual, and we've seen this a lot in a lot of the different top hackers, where there used to be a lot more of a focus on recon, and now there's more of a focus on manual hunting. As you were making that switch, in the middle, so did this switch occur in 2022 when you were coming out of that scenario, or is this something that happened a little bit later? And how did that transition occur for you?
The transition didn't really happen because of like the content so much. Like the streaming was a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
But it just happened. I needed a change. Like it wasn't just with hacking. I needed everything to change. So I was changing my personality to some extent, my appearance, like going to the gym and like dieting and things like that, my hacking style, like everything that I did. I just wanted to recreate who I was as a person. And even though my personality isn't my hacking, but hacking was a part of my persona online. That's what it is. And I really had to figure out what I wanted to do. And I sat down and went through all of my reports. Well, how was I making so much money between the years of 2015 or 2014 and 2018? Well, A, I wasn't a manager. I wasn't a senior manager at HackerOne. That took a lot of time. But B, I was just niching down in one single program. At the time was Airbnb, a couple of the private programs. But a lot of times, and then I looked at the recon bugs that I was finding. The recon bugs that I was finding wasn't so much of having nowadays like nuclei templates and things that were automated. It was just like I was the first to find an asset, or I was the first to find a functionality, or even like I found an asset that people just looked over, but it was just people knew about it, but no one found vulnerabilities in them. Those were my strengths. And with bug bounties, I really want to tell people, like, the biggest things, you have to find what your strengths are. There's no wrong and right with what you do. If your strength is to be really good at recon, then that's your niche. Good for you. You have to go do that. But if you want to be a web app hacker, you want to be good at breaking apart vulnerabilities in a web application. If you're good at prevent bugs, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you're good at, and some people are shit at it. You should be okay with that. And I had being a top hacker, I had a problem with like, well, I don't want to be this person that's not, doesn't know these vulnerabilities, but I don't want to be the elitist anymore. I don't want to be this like top hacker. I just want to make money, do something I could do, good with, and teach people how I do the things that I do. So now I make the content of things that I enjoy doing. And if people want to watch it, perfect. And if they don't, they don't. I no longer care to justify being a top hacker anymore.
Right.
And that's become so easy now.
Yeah, no, that's
I
awesome.
had a lot of this with mobile hacking as well, where like for a long time I associated, and a lot of like my identity was associated with like being the mobile hacking guy. And like that's cool. Like it was awesome for a while, but then I grew to a point where I was like, I want to be doing more than that. And kind of for like the same reason you were talking about, like I didn't want to fall into this niche where like that just became like the only thing I did. And like I think mobile hacking is probably big enough where it's not like a small niche, you know, where like you could still probably make a ton of money and there's like a lot of research and stuff you can do there. But I just want like I felt like there was just more that I could be doing, and so I started to like push away from that. But it was such a rough learning experience because like I had been used to like, you know, things coming very easily with like all the mobile hacking stuff because I've been doing it for so many years. And then it was like starting this different type of hacking. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like running into a brick wall. Like what do I even do? Like, and just like, it really like took me for a loop because it was such a learning experience of like adjusting my hacking flow and how I was approaching things to be less targeted towards like what I was used to and more targeted towards things I wasn't.
I think the biggest thing that people like, I feel there's a when you get into hacking, I think everybody wants to make it to a certain point, right? You made it with mobile hacking. Justin, you have done a bunch of stuff. I can't even name one for you, but you have gone through these phases of doing things, right? But everybody at some point is going to hit a blockade of things they do with their niche. You hit it with mobile, you didn't enjoy it, or you learn everything about it, whatever the reasoning was. I think pivoting as a whole for us as humans, regardless of what we do in our life, in our careers, with hacking, with whatever we do in life, pivoting is a huge thing. And a lot of people don't want to do that. That includes me. I have a hard time going out of my comfort zone. But since I've started pivoting to different areas, whether it's with my content, making inspirational content instead of technical content, whether it's doing apps I never hacked on before, collaborating with new hackers, putting myself out there, it's worked out because that's a part of who you are. That's a part of it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I want to double click.
I actually wanted to
go ahead, Joel.
No, you go ahead. No, you go ahead, because I was going to turn this a whole other way.
I was going to say, I want to double click into that for just a second and talk about a little bit how you did that from a technical perspective. So I know, largely recon and web oriented, in the beginning, and then now you're kind of pivoting a little bit. Over this past year, you mentioned that you found some vulnerabilities in desktop apps and other contexts. How did you cut your teeth with that? How did you get into it?
Well, I was pushed into it, right? So two of the instances, one of them was the LA event. We can't talk about the company. That was a big event, right? And there was a small web portion of it, but most of it wasn't web.
Exactly.
And that forced my hand. I didn't know anything about that niche of like hardware hacking at all. That forced my hand to learn stuff, or in mobile hacking as an example. I didn't know a whole lot about mobile hacking. I knew a little bit about like just, what you can do with a mobile app. You just, intercept your traffic and that's it. But I never did more than that. That really pushed my hand to do more. Right. But then I found zero bugs at that event. I showed up. I refused to do the web stuff. I was like, no way I'm going to look at the web stuff. And then I realized people were making money from the web, portion of it, which is fine. But then the London event happened. And this London event was another two programs that everybody says looked at them for years at a time. But there is a reason why they're doing a live hacking event. These companies aren't doing a live hacking event for no reason. There is more to hack on. There's definitely more vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
And me, as someone who has been at almost every live hacking event with these companies, I've learned there's always about $200,000 to $600,000 of bounties coming out every freaking time when there's companies who come back, right? And it happened again. Those companies paid about $1 million in bounties. So those pushed me, and I was like, okay, if everybody's gonna look at this London event, that one of the customers, everyone's gonna go after the web applications, and everyone's gonna struggle with finding easy vulns. How do I change that approach, right? How do I find these cool bugs within the context of a desktop app? Those are the reasons why it pushed me, right?
So when you're looking at, so in this scenario, you decided to go after the desktop app, and you said, okay, I'm going to start looking into this. I know you ended up teaming up with Shmuel as well and Alex Chapman, two people that have, that are pro in the desktop app space. How much of that was, would you say, collaboration based stuff versus you just kind of sitting down, cutting your teeth on desktop apps, reading as much documentation as you can, versus like combining multiple different skills from different hackers together, you bringing your web expertise, them bringing their desktop expertise, and creating a wonderful result.
Funny enough, the collaboration didn't happen until the last 4 hours of that event entirely on day 2. So I have this vulnerability in this desktop app. I couldn't exploit it. We couldn't figure out what to do with it. I'm sitting out inside looking at the door. It's me, a couple other hackers, and God bless his soul, Sam Curry is DLZ is sitting right next to me. And he's like, you guys know how Sam is. He's very quiet. He just makes, he has these comments he makes very randomly, right? So I'm sitting here, I'm like, dude, I know I can RCE this bug, but I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I have this bug, we don't know what to do. I think you were maybe at the table too. I don't know.
Yeah, I was around.
Yeah. And then you say something about, well, why don't you go find someone to work with? And then Alex is walking in at this time. Alex Chapman is just literally walking. Shmuel is sitting right here next to me. And then Sam goes, yeah, Alex is walking. And why don't you go talk to him? Maybe I bet you he can exploit it. I go and do that with Shmuel and we exploit it. And I think I put Sam on that bug for like a 5 or 10% as
of course.
Right? But the point of the story is like, it wasn't like the collaboration was planned. I was working on a bunch of different vulnerabilities. I found stuff like, so the back to the story for this customer was a lot of CSP limitations. You couldn't bypass CSP a lot of times.
And this is within the desktop app, right?
Yep. But also on the desktop, on the web, on the mobile, on the core web app of this company, there's a CSP that no one could bypass. I found the way to bypass the limitations, which I can talk on a little bit. But I kept finding these like HTML injections. Like I could insert hyperlinks and then I would do SMB tricks, but I couldn't because you can use only one slash. If you do 2 slashes, it wouldn't work, right?
Sure.
So I have all these different vulnerabilities, but I can't exploit a single thing, except I find a bypass within the desktop app or in the mobile or even the web app that you could do a meta refresh. But instead of doing 2 slashes, you can do a // and your Chrome browser or your browser actually translates that 2 slashes. So the limitation of doing 2 slashes with SMB, you can't do 2 backslashes with SMB to do a SMB connection for an RCE. When you're doing a meta refresh, you can do a / site.com and it refreshes the entire web page to another one. In the context of a web app, isn't worth anything, right? But in the context of a desktop app, you can now control that entire desktop app that you're working on, and you can do whatever you want with it. And we want to go to the next phase of it. And just having that bypass is what made it sweet. I know 3 other hackers who had that vulnerability that couldn't exploit it, and no one reported it, except one of them was like, hey, I knew this, can we collaborate? And we collaborated with him. And then Chapman was able to exploit it fully.
Wow, dude, that's amazing. So to recap that there, you're finding an HTML injection inside of the desktop app. I don't know. I imagine it's like an Electron app or something like that. And then you're using that HTML injection along with a meta tag to refresh and use backslashes instead of slashes. Now you're on your attacker controlled page inside the app, and now you've gained control of the application. And then Mr. Chapman took it from there. Yeah.
And those are the things that I talk about, right? Like, there are so many HTML injections that you can have HTML injection on this app, but nobody for some reason thought about the meta refresh. The problem with the slashes on this particular app was you can't do URLs because a double slash translates to a URL, a website to them. So they didn't allow it. The backslash would save their ass. So that was the example of saying pivoting, right? It's okay, this web application, I had a web app bug that got paid really decently. It was a cool bug, but this particular one was the highest bounty I've gotten at a live hacking event, I feel like.
Wow.
Right? And it's just pivoting from, I think it was, I want to say it was a 40K bounty.
Yeah.
They didn't give us critical, they gave us high because we couldn't prove full RCE, but they knew it's exploitable and they honored it as a high. Yeah. But that's the point of pushing yourself out of your boundaries, right? It's just going, okay, I know web, I know this Electron apps are pretty much like web applications, but there's more impact if you can exploit them than the traditional XSS. And if there's CSP in place, you have the ability of abusing other functionality that's not XSS particularly.
So I guess in this scenario, the thing you were talking about that allowed you to get around CSP, that was the MetaConnect thing. There wasn't some other thing that allowed you to get around CSP, or okay,
it was just the MetaConnect because now you can point it to another website that you control. You can put whatever you want on there, and if you have XSS and if you have JavaScript in that context for an Electron app, it doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter where the JavaScript is being executed from, as long as you're calling the right functions to download and execute a file, right?
Wow, that's awesome, man. So you used HTML to redirect the whole page, and that's pretty much The only thing I can really think of that does that is the meta tag. The only other thing that I can think of is maybe that, like with an iframe, getting able to iframe another page in and then execute it. But then that wouldn't be the top level page. It would be a sub page.
Correct.
So
you can do hyperlinks, but when you do a hyperlink, also sometimes it opens up an actual web browser, right? Because those are the things that I looked at. I was like, okay, what if I make a hyperlink? But no, the easiest route was the SMB stuff. You just do an SMB to your box, and then that's like automatic RC usually. But none of that was working. And I really wanted to. This was like one of the first live hacking events that I was actually participating. It's my like second or third at this point, right? And I really wanted to find something cool. And just pushing myself to out of my comfort zone. It's not super out of your comfort zone, but it's just I don't know a thing about electronic apps at this point. I don't know. I'm not, big on JavaScript either. Like I'm just learning things as I go. But just doing that, it just opened up a whole different world for me, dude.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So the last question I had with regards to that is like, and I don't know if you can talk about it without giving away too many details, but I'm wondering where your source was for this. You're syncing, obviously you're manipulating the DOM inside the app, but in a desktop application context, how are you passing data into the app? Is this something that you put into the web application and then it popped up in the desktop app, or is this like a scheme, a custom URL scheme that they registered, or what?
No, it was actually one of your user details that showed up on the app a lot. So you could put your, I don't know what it was. It may have been like a signature, a username, whatever, your name, your something like that, right? One of the profile attributes, we'll call it, right? And it was coming up in this specific page, but it was only in this page that it would actually pop with the HTML. So a lot of times, like, I don't think that I see with XSS is people are quick to jump to an alert, right? Everyone's just like image source alert, right? My go-to isn't that. My go-to is just underline H1 test 1 2 3.
Yep.
Just because I want HTML injection. I don't care, because once you have HTML injection, it opens up a whole different world of things you can do, whether it's mobile, whether it's web, whether it's these binaries, for example, desktop apps, right? I just care about the HTML injection.
Yeah.
So seeing that pop was step one. Okay, now you go to the mobile, you go to the web app, you go from the web app to the desktop app. Is it also vulnerable here? But then that connected me to a bunch of different things, because then I also realized some of the things I wasn't rendering on the web app was rendering in the desktop app as an HTML tag, right?
Wow. Okay.
So that opens up a lot more. It's same thing with mobile. You put something. So many of the bugs that I found this year were exclusively only popping up on this mobile application and not on the web version of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask, like, sort of how this speaks to sort of your overall hacking methodology, and I think this is maybe a good time to start to like talk about sort of like how you approach targets. I'm sure you've talked a bunch about this on your streams and on your videos and stuff. yeah, never. Yeah, talking about hacking, I don't think you've ever done that. But like it sounds like a lot of it sort of comes from very like simple, straightforward testing, right? Like underline H1 ASD 1 2 3, like look, just spray and pray, and like how much further than just like that payload are you testing before, like. Obviously, when you see something that's like HTML injection, you're going to follow up on that. But how much are you modifying your payloads? Like how much will you test one field? Like, do you spend all day on one page, or how fast are you switching between stuff? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Depends. Yeah. So a lot of times, like, I think it's pattern recognition. I think like 99% of bug bounties is, I don't care what you say, is pattern recognition. You identify a pattern of mistakes with a particular company and you just exploit the shit out of it. That's what it is. That's the reality of it, right? Yeah. So if I know a company is, good, I know that XSS is a big part of like their issues, then I'm probably spending more time fuzzing specific fields, but I don't change the input that I put in that often. It's one thing that I put. It's like a couple of different quotes, different encrypting, different HTML entities or something like that. For example, it's just a bunch of different characters that I put in as a polyglot, for example, and I put it in there and I analyze or overanalyze the shit out of it until I move on to the next field. But a lot of times, I'm trying to how to say this. So it's the same payload until it fires up, right? Then what you do next is different based on the target, based on your end goal, what you're gonna do with it. Like you wanna do an XSS, or maybe you can push it into PDF, for example, or maybe you can push this into some server side stuff and you can do Blind XSS. Then that objective changes, right? But a lot of times it's the same payload that I put in just to see how the application is going to react to my user input.
That's really interesting because
so testing those behaviors.
There's like this concept of a benign polyglot payload, right? Because if you look up XSS polyglot, you'll kind of see, all sorts of JavaScript URLs and weird comments and text.
15 different ways to write script. Yeah,
exactly. And
those I don't use. Yeah, that's not what I use though. No, I'm saying just I make my own. It's like my own homemade, few tags, few characters, things that I know is going to break out of an input field. It's going to break out of a script tag. It's going to break out of a text area. It's going to break out of X, Y, and Z. And then looking at the DOM, I spend a lot of time chasing those. The reason why I do like test 1, 2, 3, 4 is because I chase that test 1, 2, 3 within the DOM and see where it all shows up, right? That's a lot of things that if you just put test not an easy thing to chase, but if you do test 1, 2, 3, 4, something very unique to you, then it's easier to follow up.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it really makes sense on why you would do the benign payloads, but also have the polyglot. So it is a really good exercise for the listener, to go look at what the polyglot payloads are out there are doing in particular, and why they have to be as complex as they are, and then simplify them down to make a polyglot that works only in the HTML injection context, that doesn't have the goal of cross-site scripting, because the first step to getting cross-site scripting is getting HTML injection in X amount of the scenarios. Obviously, you've got to account for the location-based syncs or whatever. But I think that's a really great piece, and it it not using a polyglot and just using double quote H1, you're going to miss stuff, and if you use the polyglot, you're going to miss stuff. So you got to find that nice, sweet spot where you're not getting too verbose and you're not being too simple either.
But there's also two things to that. One is if you put very obvious HTML tags, sometimes it gets filtered. So the objective isn't just to get HTML injection in there, it's also to break out of whatever current context you're in. Because there's going to be times where I put my payload in it breaks out, but the filtering takes out some of the HTML, or the filtering actually helps me break out of it because it's taking things out and putting it together,
it's replacing or whatever.
It's converting it. It's replacing, converting it, right? So that's a big part of it. But I also want to, I want to really kind of caution people of this. Also, when you put something like a script, or if you put event handlers in there, it might just strip out the entire string you gave it. By default, it's going to say, "Oh, I see bad. I'm going to take it all out." Right. So that's why the reason why I do it is the particular order, particular way, just to see, can I break out of this before I even think about exploitation? Can I break out of this thing that hints to me hey, this is a vulnerability here, and look at it.
I always think,
and this kind of goes back to what I was going to say. This kind of meant the whole dictionary encyclopedia thing I was talking about. And you mentioned rabbit holes as well. I feel like all these things sort of play together, where it's so easy to fall down an infinite rabbit hole of just you could test every payload, everything on one field, and you can do that for every single field. But you have to draw the line somewhere. Do you have a spot where you draw that line? Where you decide okay, I think this is enough testing on this settings panel or whatever?
I feel like by the dictionary, by the definition of the dictionary, I may be considered as insane because a lot of times I keep repeating the same thing that's not doing anything for me. And then suddenly it works because, it didn't work 3 months ago and now it works suddenly because they made a change in the code, right? So I think by definition, I may be a little crazy, but I don't have it's not like I'm sitting here going, oh, I spent 4 days on this thing, because I feel like, one, there's your instincts, right? That says, I know there is something here, right? You have this instinct that it comes after years of experience that you go, I can feel there's something here. And then maybe you don't exploit it and somebody else does, right? And you go, fuck, I could have done that, or I should have done this, I should have tested for it. So for that reason, I spend a lot of time. It goes back to my personality of being addicted to wanting to do these specific way. But then that's why I get burnt out sometimes. It's because I'm spending countless days on the same thing over and over and over again. And then suddenly I have my ADHD kicks in. It's okay, let's jump around a little bit. So no, if there is a particular portal or a settings page or something that looks really fishy, I'm going to throw a bunch of things at it. So my thing goes, I'm going to try everything I know. everything I know in the dictionary, in the books, in my tricks, in my sleeve, everything I try. Then I share that with my inner circle, right? If I'm not collaborating with them a lot of times, if I'm doing something solo, then I go, yo, I found this thing. I think Justin has gotten a bunch of like random shit. Even you, Joel, I've seen you come like random stuff over time that I'm like, dude, I smell a vuln here. Like, can you take a look at it? And then they throw me ideas, right? Like they give you things that you didn't think about, or it may be like an idea, and then I do that. Then it's when I go, okay, I'm going to open source this. And I go on Twitter, I go, I have this thing. I think you've seen like a bunch of times I tweet these things. I go, I'm fighting this thing. These are the things I've tried. Give me your best shot. And then people give me ideas, and then I just give up at some point.
Yeah.
But I have to go through that list to make sure I've covered it, because a lot of times I've learned with the life hacking events, I look at it, I go, well, son of a bitch, I should have tested that.
Yeah. I will say nowadays it's great, because during the show and tell, I'd say like earlier on in the live hacking cycle, I would see the show and tells and I'd be like, oh, I should have tested that thing, but like I just didn't, and like that's why I missed it. Now it's like, I should have tested that thing, and there's no way in hell I would have tested what they just tested to get that bug. So good on them. Like,
but also the other thing is like, but for me also the other thing of it is sometimes I sit and I go, well, good for them. Like at least somebody figured it out, or this bug would have gone to waste, right? Like I sit there, I go, damn, I should have tried that, but then at least somebody figured it out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. So from there, I kind of want to continue in going down this path of hacking methodology, and then we'll bounce around a little bit into some technical stuff, into some I guess bug bounty related statistics. But so basically, what you just said, it sounds like you're a little bit more of a thorough hacker. We one of the questions we ask a lot on the pod is like, how soon do you jump around before you know, if you haven't found a bug, how long do you give a program? And so it sounds like if you're throwing your whole hat of tricks at it, you know, it might take a little while. Is that accurate, or?
It honestly depends. It all depends on my workload, to be honest. Like it depends on what I got going on that week. So there's times when, you know, when it's like a live hacking event, there's no giving up, because the live hacking event coming up, there's a lot for grabs, and then it's like a personal event that I'm like, I need to make this work. I want to have a bug. I want to even contribute to this event, right? That's a different story. But with the programs that I hack on, I become very selective. I select programs that I know, it's going to pay me enough. It's going to be worth the 3 days of not finding voles, or 3 weeks of not finding voles, on going down this rabbit. Damn it. Sorry.
All good.
I like that it has its own like effect for it. It's cool. Like when my camera dies, it's not nearly that cool. It just dies. Yeah,
for some reason I've now figured out how to get this out of idle for every 30 minutes. It does this.
That's hilarious. Yeah, for those of you listening, his camera is going off, into rainbow mode every once in a while. Yeah.
But yeah, it all depends. Like, you know, it depends on my workload. But with live hacking events, there is no stopping. And then there are times where a company comes up that I really want to hack on, right? So I'll give you an example. I got asked to do a presentation for this company. I have a web app, mobile app, desktop app, and I had a month and a half to prepare for it. But naturally, I was traveling, live hacking events, life, whatever. I have a week. That whole week, I did not stop until I found the phone the night before the presentation. Yep. There's no stopping until that goal happens. I wish I had a good way of saying this is where I draw the line. It all comes down to my workload. If I know that tomorrow I have to make content, the next day I have to do X, Y, and Z, and then I have to travel to somewhere else, I'm probably going to give up within when my first 3 days are up. Like I spend 2-3 days on this app, nothing happens, time to move on, time to cut my losses. But if it's a company that I've hacked on in the past, I've had good results with, then I pushed out more and more, because I know I've gotten a bounty from this company before. I know the patterns of mistake. I'm willing to spend more time because I know the ROI is there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, when you've established in a relationship with a company, and even 3 days is pretty long for some of the researchers that we've talked to. Where I always think Douglas is hilarious. Douglas is like, if I don't find a bug in like 3 hours, then I normally just move on. And I'm like, what the heck are you like? What are you doing, man?
He's like, the 3 days, like 3 hours a day.
Yeah,
that's the thing though. That depends on the 3 days, because the 3 days isn't like I'm doing 8-hour days.
Right.
It's, the first day I'm doing, the first 4, the way I look at it is like the first 4 hours is really like, what the fuck am I doing?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
What is this app? What am I supposed to do? What are the
Yeah.
patterns of mistakes? I'm just plugging things in and just observing and like taking in everything that the application does. The second day is like, okay, now you're really, I'm getting pissed off, right? And then I'm gonna go a little bit harder to find. I'm gonna like extend my attack surface, as we call it, right? Then the third day is like, okay, dude, like either I fucking find something today, or I just don't. I give up. I'm fucking done.
Oh
and I feel like you guys see this in a lot of your groups, right?
He's pounding the table too. It's so funny. Yeah, dude, 100%. And I think it's funny you mentioned 4 hours, because that's exactly the same length of time that I always allot for that first little bit. Is like, all right, the first 4 hours or so, I'm just trying to figure out what this app does, how to use it. Reading the documentation, stepping through it. I have no expectations of finding bugs within the first 4 hours of hacking. And then after that, like you said, the stages continue to grow, where it's like, if I haven't found anything by day 3, I'm like, really having a vendetta against this app. So that's hilarious that we're both kind of on that same front.
So I looked it up online. There's 4 stages of anger. It's annoyed, frustrated, hostile, and enraged. I don't get to enraged unless it's required. I just looked it
hilarious.
up. I stopped at the 3rd level. And I think I kind of described it pretty well at this point. So
yeah. So actually, I want to go back and talk about that, because you said, sometimes you're working for 4 hours. I struggle, especially with having another thing, right? Having the podcast because I need contiguous time. I need, long periods of time where I can stay focused and hack. I can't hack for an hour, then go do something, then come back, hack for an hour, then go do something, come back, hack for an hour. Do you have that same experience? And how do you balance hacking with content creation? Like, do you allot certain days of the week, or do you just hack after a certain time, or how does that work?
Yeah. So a day in life of Nahamsec. A day in life for me is like usually I wake up, I do the thing. So funny enough, I don't consider hacking something that takes a lot of brain power, because I feel like once you sit on your computer, you're an autopilot, right? Like you know what to do. It's the comfort thing for me. I get comfortable with hacking, right?
Yeah.
So morning is like all the calls, all the meetings, working with the stuff that I'm building, working on content, emailing, community shit, whatever you want to call it, right? That's what I do in the mornings. It's my first, 8 to noon, maybe 8 to 2 sometimes. Then at about 2 o'clock is when I want to switch. So I go to the gym usually for about an hour. Then I come home, maybe take an hour off. Maybe I go to like my hot tub, or I shower.
Yeah,
and
hot tub squad. Let's go.
A hot tub.
I feel like I'm the only hacker without a hot tub.
Joel, why don't you come over and we'll redo this episode at one point from my hot tub? He's got one too.
I would love that. All right. Love that.
We'll do a hot tub. But I have a disconnect of a shift in my in my brain. I shifted over to something else. Whether I'm doing a pen test, I'm bug bounty hunting, or whatever. That's the case for like my regular days. That doesn't include life hacking events, but a lot of times you'll see me do like get all my meetings out of the way. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, go to the gym, come back and switch over to hacking, because it's just easier. And then I can have stuff happening. I'll make food and do something, and then go back and forth for like 4 to 6 hours a day. But there's also times when you're getting success that makes it harder, though, right? Like there's when I hit those huge bug bounty month that I was doing, there was no boundaries at all. It was 8 o'clock. I was waking up. I was doing bug bounty things like for 2 hours, then doing calls, meetings, going to the gym, coming back, doing it, and I'm just going stir crazy because I'm so hyped over it. Those are the edge cases. Life hacking was an edge case for it. But typically I try to have that shift where I do my day work, just get all the boring tasks out of the way. Everyone's awake. Adam I work with, he's in London, so I have to wake up early to work with him sometimes.
Right.
People that want to, people have 9 to 5s that want to meet with you. They're not going to meet with you, and they want to meet with you in the morning. So prioritize those, but then I do that. You have to have that mentality shift. And I also surprisingly don't even hack out of this room. This is purely meeting, content, whatever.
Really? Interesting.
I sit crisscross applesauce, headphones in on the couch. I don't care if something's on the TV or not, but no, I have to sit on the couch comfortably with my feet like crisscross and just sitting there in like a position where I'm comfortable and just hacking from the couch.
I agree. I was gonna say that I had a couple things I was gonna say, but like that's true for me too. Like I find it, even though I have like this really nice setup, it's very difficult for me to like feel comfortable hacking when I'm like in such a structured environment, I feel like a lot of the time the best hacking that I do is when I'm just like sort of on the fly, like ad hoc.
Yep.
I'm just sitting next to somebody, or I'm just like chilling and I'm just like got my laptop pulled out or whatever, and I'm just like fiddling with stuff. Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing I was gonna say was how do you manage like the energy aspect of it? Because you mentioned like you start hacking at like 3:00 after like a day of like meetings and whatever and stuff. For me, I can be totally drained by 3:00, and like that's very difficult to keep up the energy level and sort of like the mental stamina to keep pushing after sort of like that hump in the day. Do you have like hacks that you use personally to get over that, or how do you
well, I mean, it depends on the day, right? Like you are going from your daytime job where you have, I'm sure you have someone you report to and people that report to you, you have responsibilities. That the structure of a corporate job is different than when you work for yourself, I feel like, because I don't have, except for the couple people that work with me on my team, I don't have to manage them, right? They have their projects, I do my part, they do their part, we're good, right? I don't have that mental block of like, oh, I got to meet with my boss and explain the things that I've done this week because I'm responsible for them. No, it's me, it's me and me. Oh, let me call my boss. Can I get today off? Yep, you're off today, right? That's the truth of it, right? When I make friends, I do this with my friends. Like, can you go?
My boss is really on my ass right now.
Well, my buddies are like, we're hanging out. Like, hey, can you message your? Can you tell us if you can do this on Friday? I go, hey, can you get today off? Oh wait, I have Friday off now. Okay, cool.
Dude,
like that's a good thing about working for yourself, right? So, but
it is.
It doesn't mean that I don't have the days where like I have back-to-back meetings and then I have a really fucking hard day and I don't want to hack. I have those days and I go, whatever, I'm not gonna hack today. Like it happens.
And that's that's the nice part about
live events are not included in that.
Yeah, no. Those are a different animal. That's the nice part about being self-employed and particularly full-time Bug Bounty is I feel like if you're good enough at Bug Bounty, you can do that, right? Because you're making enough money to say like, hey, I actually really don't feel like hacking today. And that was one of the mistakes I made earlier on in my full-time Bug Bounty career was like I was like getting on my own ass every single day if I wasn't out there, hacking stuff. And then Mariah tells me one day, she's like, Justin, you don't need to, if you don't feel like hacking today, just take the day off, and come back at it when you love it and when you're inspired by it and when you're, hyped for it, and you're going to get way better results, which I think is really true. And I'm glad, you've learned that lesson. And it seems like
absolutely, man.
From the way that you've described it, you have you've managed the stress aspect of having the content and the hacking together really well, which is something I'm still trying to balance out myself. You have to be
gentle with yourself, man. Like only you know what internally you're going through. I'm sure with like Mariah knows a lot of it, but you know what's going on inside, right? There are days when I just, even with life, I can give it sometimes. I go, you know what? Fuck it. Worst is I don't find anything. Like I have to be okay with it. It's not an easy shift. So when I went from a daytime job to working for myself, it was really hard because how do you measure that, right? How do you measure success with when you're not working a 9 to 5? You can't, right? It's really hard because you go, if I don't make money, who do I blame? Or if I make more money, right? It's just you're the only one that is responsible. So you also have to have that relationship with yourself to be able to say, you know what, today was a rough day and I just want to hang out and like watch movies, or I just want to play video games, or whatever that is. My thing is a lot of times I try not to, so when I'm doing like these, I go through these sprints, right? I try to do like, I'm gonna go grind out bug bounties for a while and then I'm gonna be done for it. During those times, I tell myself like by 8:00, 9:00, try and just like disconnect and go play some video games or watch a movie, watch a TV show or something. So about 8:30, 9:00, if my friends text me like, hey, Call of Duty tonight, fuck it, I'm gonna get on and play games with them.
100%.
You have to be okay with having those, because if you're not doing that, then that's how burnouts happen. The reality of it is it's gonna happen.
What about weekends? Do you work on weekends, or do you mostly take weekends off?
I don't have a concept of working. I've tried to get rid of the concept of 9 to 5 and weekends. If I feel like Saturdays are the day I kind of do stuff, it's like I catch up on some stuff. Sundays, no, I don't work, because I tell myself you need one day for yourself, and it's not to not work. I still work on Sundays. I make my thumbnails and like I prep videos on Sundays, but it's not, I don't have a set schedule. Sundays is laundry day, and maybe
That's
some bug
great.
bounties if I feel like it, like if I have, if I have the time. But I want to have a day where I don't have a schedule. Monday through Friday, I have a schedule of like I gotta do calls and all these things, and then Saturdays like it's a mix of both. But I'm not putting the pressure on myself to say I have to work this Saturday. But if I go, I kind of want to do this right now, it's work that I'm gonna jump on and do it. So you want to have, on my Sundays it's a no play, but Saturday is like I'm gonna work. I play chess on Saturdays. Every Saturday
cool.
I go and play this guy at a coffee shop. I met him randomly like 2 months ago. Now every Saturday I go play with him, but I make that time. I go, okay, if you're working, at least take the time to go play chess with Roy, hang out with him, and then go back to whatever you were doing.
Nice.
Shout out to Roy. He will never watch this, but shout out to
that. Shout out to Roy. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Well, okay, so this isn't a great transition, but I did want to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned this at the beginning. Okay. You mentioned that you saw like huge growth during one quarter of your journey, and I guess this kind of does play a little bit with like the motivation and burnout aspects and stuff. I'm looking at this photo that you put in the doc here, and
this is bug bounty stats right now. You're looking at, right, Joel?
Yeah, bug bounty stats. Yes, bug bounty stats. I mean, this spike in Q3 is bananas, right? It's like twice your best quarter, otherwise, like maybe even more than twice your best quarter otherwise.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about sort of what happened there? Was there anything in particular that changed that sort of created that? Is it sustainable to keep at that pace? Like, tell me a little bit about what happened in Q3.
A lot of things happened. So in November of 2022 is when I left my job, and I was jobless, and it was more of a, okay, well, time to find, I was thrown into like the dream that I had, like eventually working for myself, not on my terms, but I was pushed to finally have to do this, right? So naturally the first quarter, I'm just going insane. What am I going to do? What am I going to work on? How am I going to make money? What am I going to do to like enjoy what I do? All that stuff. Q2 is, so Q1 is just like planning. These are my goals. I'm very much like goal oriented. Like I have to write out my goals. Like how am I going to achieve them? I wish I had this. Hold on, let me show it to you. I have this journal. If anyone wants to actually, follow along and do this also, I really recommend it. It's called the Best Self Journal, and it allows you to set up 3 goals. I'm not going to share those with you, but this is what a day-to-day looks like. It gives you this page right here. It says today's goal, what you're grateful for, today's 3 targets, your to-do list, and what will make today great. It is insanely cool. And let me see if I have an empty page of it. So I can show you how you can set up your goals. So it lets you set up goals, and it says like, how do you, what is this goal? What is the milestones for it? And that's how you plan it. So every week you plan it, and you put your goals right here, and you go after it. I'm very much so, I want to do this. So in Q2, it was just more of a get it together for bug bounties. Like, if you want to make decent amount of money, bug bounties is probably the easiest way to do it, where you can make enough money to also not worry about your bills, but while you launch your company and do things. Q3 was when that came to reality, because I started hacking more on this bug bounty program. They did a live hacking event with HackerOne, and I also started collaborating with people that I didn't collaborate with in the past, like more seriously collaborate. And then finally finding the balance in Q3 between content, hacking, and what do I want to do? Like, what do I want to do that I'm going to at least be happy? So, in the beginning of the year, I was happy. I told myself, if I make 80K this year, I'll be happy.
Yep.
How'd you do?
But it's a scary thing, because I've never done bug bounties like this, right? Bug bounties was never my source of income. It was always like, I knew it was doable. I was just like, okay, it's not fair to say 80K. 80K was what I could do to be comfortably living. So if I make 80K, I can comfortably live and pay my bills and not be stressed. Yeah. But that's what happened in Q3, a lot of it. It was more of a figuring out the balance, figuring out the day-to-day that I told you. It's like, oh my God, this is working. Working on content in the morning, gym, and then hacking is working.
Right.
Collaborating with people like Zayed, Sean, and all these other people really helped. So it's just figuring that out and just saying, okay, I'm going to keep doing this until the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
Okay. So then when I look at the graph, if I could just follow up on that, I then see Q4. Now, Q4 was second best quarter of the year, but what did you sort of get more relaxed, like holidays and stuff? Like, did what was the difference? Because it sounds like you kind of had figured out in Q3. So I was expecting Q4 to be like the same or better, but I understand things happen.
Well, no, with Q3, so I wasn't, with this specific program, we'll call it, with this program, I was hacking on them before, and I wasn't taking it serious. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna make some money, and it's great. They're giving me some money here and there. Cool. I'm making a bounty every week. Cool. But then H1702 happened, and a lot of people think like at H1702 I was hacking on like some specific like app that no one had access to. Half of it is correct. I found something that no one had access to, but also I realized like there is so much of this specific company that you can hack on that you can't even wrap your head around it. It's such a ginormous company, right? So Q3 is that realization, and then going from the H1702 event to Q4 is when I was like, okay, time to double down on this company. There's people are making a ton of money. Why can't I do the same thing? And Vegas was an example of it. When I came out of Vegas, it was just I rode that high of Vegas for 3 months, dude.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, I know that once you hit those goals, you're like, you know what? I'm going on a trip. I'm enjoying my birthday, like all this thing, and I was like, hell yeah, dude! It's so well deserved, and I think you still actually like got a bunch more bounties after that too, right?
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. But I just want to mention like it's a lot of figuring things out, like figuring out what worked, figuring out what schedule worked for me, figuring out like holy shit, I have this program that's paying a lot of money. So you can see the build up. Q1 they paid me a little bit of bounty. Q3 is when I was like, holy crap, like this is the reality of it. I can make this money. If I can make 30-40K a month from this bug bounty program, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
right.
100%, and I think it shows as well.
Dude.
It shows as well, it took you a year to crack that code. You started in November 2022, and then Q3 of 2023 is when this really started manifesting. And I'm looking at this chart as well. This is the same chart that we talk about a lot. This is the submissions by severity or submissions in a quarter period from the HackerOne Performance tab, and I'm seeing almost all of these are highs. There's almost no mediums and no lows, and there's quite a few criticals, but the vast majority of these are highs. And I imagine that's because you sort of cracked the code on how to get a bug qualified as a high on, and that would really allow you to increase your earnings a lot, because every little mistake they make, now you figured out a way to work that into a high, and you can repeat that success over and over again. Is that accurate?
It is, but it's also how they perceive a vulnerability, like what they consider as a high. But also a lot of times it's just connecting things, like saying, okay, maybe like they go, this is a medium, but then you extend it to another application and you can elevate that to a high, right? I'm trying to like talk about these vulnerabilities vaguely as I can. But yeah, it's a lot of times just knowing if you prove one case to them as a high, then everything else is considered as a high to them. It's the same root cause for them. But some of these bugs were also like things that I've never explored in the past. Like there are a couple of things that I never thought I could find in this company. It's just going down a list of these vuln types and being able to go, I did this one, I did this one, I did this one, I did this one, and going through it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the other breakdown here, submissions by weaknesses, and we're seeing a lot of XSS, seeing a lot of access control, and a lot of IDOR as well. Would you say that those are like the bread and butter for you as far as vulnerabilities goes? And then I know XSS is such a big category.
But there's also the no weakness type, because a lot of those the no weakness ones are a chain of like different vulnerabilities, and with the XSS ones. So like, I'll give an example for the XSS ones. So this is a mistake on my end. For example, if I RCE'd a desktop app because of with the cross-site scripting, the root cause is still cross-site scripting. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of those that are, I want to say there's like 10 of those that are like that. The root cause is still cross-site scripting. The reality is the cross-site scripting, but it's just how you exploit it and how you, show impact to get more money. Some of them are like mobile related, and I own the mobile app a couple of times, but again, the root cause is cross-site scripting again. So it's a lot of those things. It's just that comes to going to like finding out different contexts of vulnerabilities and how they work in different areas of the, this company, mobile apps, web apps, desktop apps, and stuff like that.
Okay. This is a little on the spot. How many dupes did you get this year? Do you know?
Actually, can I check for that? Let me see.
Yeah, go ahead and check on that. And I think it's interesting that you highlighted that piece about XSS, because it is so like, you're able to do so much with it. You can escalate it in a web context. You can try to pivot it to a mobile app or to a desktop app. And then even, just within the web context, you have a lot of ways that you can exploit with getting access to session information, cookie bombing. Like there's just very few other vuln types that you can chain as well as an XSS to achieve some crazy stuff.
So with the duplicates and its loading, you have to think about a bunch of them are duplicates of my own bugs also.
Right. Okay. That's tricky. Yeah.
So it's 2 pages worth. I'm assuming it's 25 a page.
Yeah,
so one
50.
page for 25. It's about less than 50.
Wow.
No, wait, there's more. Actually, it's a third page. Hold on. There's 3 pages. So about 50 to 75.
Nice.
But there's a vast number, there's a large number of them that's like, it's different functionalities, but it's the root cause, it's the same. But yeah, about 75. And I don't, submission wise, I wish I had the number for how many I submitted, but I think I submitted a lot this year.
Yeah, I think you can find that number, somewhere, and I think it would be interesting to see the dupe to valid.
Let me see
ratio.
what my triage and let me see what my my triage and resolves are.
Yeah, or you can say one of the easiest ways to do it is to do bounty awarded and then select that date range within the filtering settings there.
146 is my number of closed as resolved and triage right now for 1123 to 1124.
Wow, dude. So you were reporting, you reported like 200 probably over 200 bugs in 2023.
Oh, 61 duplicates. There we go. The number for customers going to 61 duplicates, and the 140 something, that was my valid triage.
So right about 200 and
wow.
Yeah, about 25, a little over 25%. Yeah.
Wow. That's
pretty solid.
That's amazing. So jumping off the back of that XSS piece, one of the technical sections that we wanted to talk about while you were on here is the blind XSS. And I think that this is a category that not a lot of people specialize in. So it's cool to have you come on the show and say like, yeah, blind XSS is kind of my thing. So can you talk a little bit about it as a vulnerability class? Perhaps just provide an introduction to it, and then we'll kind of dive into what kind of payloads you're using, what kind of platform you're using for that, and custom mods to XSS payloads.
So first of all, I don't consider myself to say blind XSS is my thing. I've just happened to be very blessed with it this year.
Sure.
Big portion of this also goes to, I gotta give a big shout outs to Z Shano for this specifically, because he has also pushed me a lot, or pushed my buttons also a lot to find more blind cross-site scripting, and just bouncing ideas with me, and just going to him and venting to him sometimes. It's same thing with Zayed also. I just gotta give them two shout outs before I start. But blind XSS is just the same as your regular stored XSS, I want to say. A lot of times it's stored more than reflected. But the difference is, instead of it happening on the front app that you see, it happens on the back end where the company's team sees it. So think about, if HackerOne had a back portal, for example, where they can see your reports, you have a cross-site scripting payload that doesn't, fire in the report section, but it fires in HackerOne's back end. Funny enough, if you look up, I actually had that happen to HackerOne once.
No way.
While I was working there.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
XSS fire off an internal network at HackerOne. But yeah, it's just, a lot of it is you just learn that these companies make mistakes. The mistakes don't happen in the front end a lot of times. It happens in the back end because they go, well, no one's going to ever see this, and we don't have to worry about it. And guess what? It does happen a lot more than you can expect.
And so I that exact rationale was what I wanted to talk to you about. How do you identify what pieces of information are going to end up in an admin panel somewhere? Where do you get those ideas?
I think it's very, I don't want to say it's common sense, but it's just very it's a thing that you think a company wants to collect on you, right?
Yeah.
So when you register, what matters to that? That's your name, your email address, your address, your credit card information in some cases, anything that could identify you as a duplicate account, for example. They can say these are the same user, so that could be your browser information, for example, and things like that. And then things that could also traces you, like when you have different websites and things like that, right? It's how do they identify you as a user and you as a browser, or not the user itself, but the browser, for example, or the device. We'll say the device for itself. So those are the things that I look at, right? those are the things that I always assume companies are collecting on you. But then also it goes the information that you put in to the company. So let's talk about let's say like Spotify, for example. You guys post your podcast on there, the description, the guest, the name of the, you guys, and those are also information that they collect. But they could, people probably find those XSS early on in these are those programs, but they don't think about like, oh, I wonder if this fires here, is it going to also fire in the backend? And if it does, how do I get them to fire on that backend? Right? Those are the things that you have to figure out. You have to assume, how do I go from A to B? Your A is I have XSS on the core app. How do I get to fire on the back end? How do I get this engineer, the support person without social engineering, naturally go click on it?
Okay, so that's where I was going next with that. Was like, okay, so we've got information, we've put it in, we're using a blind XSS payload that we can get a callback from. Yeah. How are we going to be the one user that the support agent clicks on, or the backend analytics admin clicks on?
I'm laughing because I don't know how to say this.
Tell me.
I know.
I know what you're going to say here.
Joel, what do you think I'm going to say? I want to see what you think.
We can cut this out if we need to.
No, go for it.
You open a support chat and you say, "Hey, I'm having an issue with this thing," and you send them a link and they click it.
That is also, that's a very good approach. But no, I don't want to promote committing fraud. I want to start with that.
Yeah.
But fraud detection is a big part of technology. How do you what's the easiest way to get banned on a platform? Right? Like, what's the easiest way? What is the easiest way for them to be like, holy crap, who is this guy? What do we do? What do we do to get rid of this person? Right? That is the number one step. It's either fraud or too much traffic, things like, hey, look at me, like screaming, like ban me. Number one step is get banned. Like that's the first step. Like, how do I get him to go ban me? Right? This could be me reporting my own account with like 20 other accounts, for example.
Oh my gosh,
I can just do that, dude. Right?
Yeah.
So what Joel said is it's so first of all, please don't go and hassle support people.
Yeah, please don't do that, to be real. Yeah.
But listen, there's a difference between saying, hey, I have a problem, it's a legitimate problem that causes an issue, versus going like, hey, click on this thing. I'm never asking the support staff to click on a link, but I am using the site like an actual like user, and I go, hey, I can't find this information. Where do I find it? And I go, oh, I still can't find it. I really can't sometimes, because guess what? My page is broken. Like I have a script tag and that's broken. I'm not lying to them. Right? So I asked them like, hey, could you set that information for me? It's a lightweight social engineering, but I try to avoid as much as I can. A lot of times, a lot of this blind access that I'm getting nowadays isn't the support staff being included. It's me figuring out these companies, how their processes work, and what does it happen to get them to look into something I do. Whether it's like, I put my credit card number in there, but the last digit is wrong. A lot of times with when you order something online, for example, they process that manually. They check for your order manually sometimes, especially if you're a brand new user. That's been one of the biggest things, dude. The number one thing that I used to do a couple of years ago was every single time, John Barberini and I were sitting at in a hotel one day.
Freaking John. I love John.
I love John. I look at him. I go, John, you want to make $1,000 today? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, let's make an order on this side. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm banned, but I bet you if you put this on this website with a blind cross-site scripting in the address, the second address line, I promise you're going to get cross-site scripting when we wake up tomorrow. He looks at me. He goes, bet. We do it. The next morning we wake up. Sure enough, it fired.
No way.
Fast forward to 5 years later. This last quarter. I call him again and I go, John, do you want to make some money, buddy? He's like, what do you got this time, Ben? And I go like, you have an account on this particular site that I want to use. I'm banned. Can you just go and do this? He goes, well, I have a problem with my account. I'm like, perfect. That's even better. Can you try this? Sure enough, tries it. Another blind cross-site scripting starts off.
Wow.
It's just getting an understanding of how these companies work, what requires them to manually have someone click on your page, and then you assuming this is the information they're going to see about me.
I'm wondering, is there any merit to sending your cross, like say it's like some sort of logging endpoint or something like that? Is there any merit to sending it on a like a time-based basis? Okay, like every 5 minutes we're going to send another one through, and because whenever somebody first opens up the admin portal, there's always going to be like sort of like a paginated list or something like that. And if you land in that first 25 or whatever, then you might get in that front area. Have you ever thought about that, or tried anything like that?
I haven't done it on purpose, because when you do stuff in the contained manner, it's a little bit spammy, and
it is spammy.
It's the last thing I want is, but I've had that happen a couple of times. A couple of like fun ones is it asks you for like a note sometimes. I put in the note, it doesn't fire. It doesn't even fire on their back end. They copy my note into an internal app for them to track, and then it fires, right? I've seen that happen before. The typical, like in my email was a fun one. One of a really cool one was a website. My password was a blind cross-site scripting payload.
No, it was not.
That fired once. This is just me copy pasting the same thing for my name, email, everything, and then the password was clear text.
Plain text.
Clear text in there.
No way. That's ridiculous, man.
That one hasn't happened. This was like 8-9 years ago. This was like 2015, 2016. So 6-7 years ago, it happened. It's just you never know, right? You never know. There's a couple of times where it's fired off in a engineer's like local machine because they downloaded everybody's feedback and they were parsing it.
That's crazy. That's so cool. And so with that, I kind of want to ask, how do you track where your payload source was? Because what always happens to me when I do blind XSS is I'll throw this payload in there, and then I'll get a callback, and then I'm like, shit, where did I put that in a form somewhere? And then how do I report it?
Let me ask you a question. What are you doing for tracking? What are you using, like a cost site? Are you using like a XSS Hunter?
Yeah, I'm just using XSS Hunter, normal XSS Hunter.
Question number 2. If you give okay, that's why. I don't know how that works. I don't know if Truffle allows you to do this. Can you give it a path?
What do you? Yeah, like a specific path at the end.
So
that's
you get your own path. You only get one path.
Yeah.
So see, this is what I do. I have my own domain.
Yeah.
If you go to the London event, it was spammed everywhere. I think people were like trolling me at some point. So I started deleting it, but I have a domain that is not it's a cross site. It's a XSS Hunter JavaScript without the backend of XSS Hunter. So it's just a JavaScript that they have.
Yeah.
And it just hooks into a PHP file, and that PHP file is what processes the entire, like when it fires, right? That's the backend is a PHP file that's like garbage. It's actually written by ChatGPT. I shit you not.
Oh my gosh.
The front end of it, I have a HTTP access rule and in there that catches every single path you give, and it serves that JavaScript file if it's not valid. So my 404 is that JS file that pops up. So when I do a when I do a blind XSS, I do domain.com/ whatever I want to make a note of. So the note could be first name and profile. That's an invalid path. So when it fires with my JS file, and it shows me where it's at. But a lot of times it's also easy to track because it's something like your name or your password and things like that. It's obvious. The feedback ones are always the hardest one to track, but a lot of companies don't care where it came from because they know where it came from.
Yeah,
right? They know where it came from.
That's really crazy. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine in scenarios where developers are like copy and pasting your data into different applications or something like that, how you trace it back to the source. It has to be done on the company side, I imagine.
That one was a hard one because if there was some issues with that one, I'd be like, oh, well, you messaged our team. I'm like, no, I didn't message anybody. They copy pasted this, dude. And I'm like, I did not say this to them. And it turned out it was a note that I left. They copied the note into their internal app and then it fired.
Wow. That's crazy, man. What a crazy hacking story.
Yeah, I know your XSS Hunter instance because I know Mr. Sam McCurry likes to use it, and I have my
that's
own
not
XSS
mine. That's
Hunter
not mine.
setup.
That's not mine. The only person that uses mine
not?
is I think that's X. That's not mine. That's X's. I also use that domain.
You must be using
sometimes.
your script because I was looking through it and there's like a bunch of like Nahamsec references in the JS.
It could be that they're using a version of it. I shared that with everybody in you guys' group. Like I have no problem with using it because it's not something I wrote. It's also like I also saw Sean using it in a specific way. I incorporated it in mine. But the biggest thing that I have is the PHP file in the backend, and me and Zayed have a I can't actually say the name of our bot, but I'll send you guys the name of the bot later. But we have a bot that we've I almost said the name. It could have got me in a lot of trouble. But we have It's the name of the bot is the name of the CEO of the company.
Okay.
So we have a, and then the team has also seen this bot when I screenshot it for them. But
so funny.
We have a bot that it just says like, hey everyone on Discord, it's at everyone new blind cross-site scripting, and it gets the URL from that report, and then also links to the report that I have. It's a text file. I store it all on my server. It's password protected. You know, we have to have a credentials to log into it, and I just go look at it and then analyze it and things like that. That system is one of the most fucked up, addicting things I've ever done, because when I was getting a lot of blind cross-site scripting, dude, I was waking up at 5 a.m., rolling over and looking at my phone to see if a new one popped up. And then when you see it pop, then you can't go back to sleep.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
So, yeah, dude, I just set up my own XSS Hunter, and I saw how yours was set up because I thought it was like standard, and I really like it because I'm gonna set up something to do the same thing with like the path catch-all and the subdomain catch-all.
That's brilliant.
It's
but here's one more thing I gotta tell you guys with like just cross-site scripting in general. I by default just use my Blind XSS payload everywhere, because it also helps me track where it is fired. And then there's been times when somebody finds some like anomaly somewhere where they're browsing the website and it fires. Like it didn't fire for me, right? Like on this app, and then they found some weird page that I embedded and it fired, and like I get the notification now. And like you go with the mobile app, sometimes the mobile pages are different, right? The path for the mobile page is different than what you see on the web app, and then you get a whole new place of like testing. So always use that for that reason.
That makes a lot of sense.
What about CSP?
And I want to come back to that CSP thing, but real quick, this is sort of contrast with what we said before about using, H1 tags for checking for XSS versus spraying around all of these blind cross-site scripting payloads that by nature of cross-site scripting have to have some sort of callback, either a JS or just an external resource callback.
Yes and no.
How do you balance the two?
So yes and no. So when I'm looking for blind cross-site scripting, that whole methodology is out the window, because I'm assuming it's gonna fire somewhere, right? When I'm looking for cross-site scripting, if it fires, then I go, okay, now how do I get it to go from XSS to blind XSS? But when how do I explain this? There's times when I know most of these companies there's behavior you observe on an application sometimes when you can tell somebody has reported a cross-site scripting here, because now they're filtering specific tags, right? But what they fail to do is look for blind cross-site scripting now. So now my objective is just solely blind cross-site scripting. And with blind XSS, you don't know. You just put your payloads in. But then what becomes interesting with blind XSS is the assumptions you have to make with the context of where your payload is going to end up. So I'm not just putting a image tag or a script tag or I don't know, whatever tag you want to call it. I'm also thinking about, right. No, where is this going to get indexed on the back end, right? Because like if my name is being shown to me on my profile in a it's not in a text area, right? More than likely where they see it is in an input field or in a box in a text area, because they have the ability to edit that, right? So with that in mind, I have to think about where that's going to show up, right? If I can't put if I can't close the HTML tag in an input tag, should I just add an event handler, for example? Like I have to think about all these different things, right? So you have to think, where do I put these? Do I put them before? Do I put them after? For the input tags, do I put it before my actual payload? Do I close that first? There's all these different things you got to think about.
So are you doing that intelligently? Like, are you thinking, okay, this is where this is gonna? Okay, you are. You're not just using like a polyglot that has end text area. Okay, wow, that's really interesting. And you had a lot of success with that.
I test out this. Yeah, I test out the theories, right? Like, first of all, like this is I don't know if this is unethical, but it is the reality of it. When you're blind cross-site scripting fires, you have an advantage, right? Because you have the entire DOM of that page that you can look at. I'm not saying look for like ways to like exploit their vulnerabilities, but look at how that backend is created, dude. Are they using a lot of like text areas? Are they doing a lot of like, what is the way they store data? And chances are they reuse the same templates everywhere, right? So you have the advantage, this is what the backend looks like once one fires, and you see where does my data go? Is it always going to be, in a title? Is it going to be a script tag? Like, where is it going to go? You have that advantage now.
That makes a lot of sense. Joel, swinging back around to the CSP related question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So you mentioned that for Blind XSS, you use the XSS Hunter, payload or whatever.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to Mandatory for that. We gotta give him a big shout out.
Yeah,
legend.
Huge. I mean, yeah, it's been like what, a decade now. It still works.
Yeah,
game changer.
Yeah, so crazy. But one thing that has always sort of puzzled me around how to exploit that successfully is the whole CSP aspect.
Yeah,
which is that basically like you're inserting an arbitrary script tag into a page, and even nowadays, like script tags, especially loading from a URL, oftentimes will just get hit by, blocked by CSP, or they just don't work in general. Why does it seem to sort of work in the Blind XSS contexts?
I don't think a lot of these first of all, like with CSP one is like, I don't know if CSP is there. Like, I don't even know if it's fire. I don't even know if it's fire. I'm gonna do that one more time. Now we have been on for a while, but no, like with the context of it, like you never. So I don't know if it's a CSP. I'm never gonna see it. It's not gonna fire. Not my problem really. I'm not gonna dwell on it. A lot of times, I don't think companies, maybe like Facebook and Google and all these companies, implement CSP on their internal stuff, but I don't think a lot of companies care. The whole thing is, no one's gonna see it. It's in our, it's in our private network.
Threat
no one's gonna have access to it. Why bother? Threat model is different. Yeah. So a lot of times I've never, there hasn't been a company that I've tried Blind XSS on, minus the fan companies, for example. Most of those fan companies, at least, like, the big ones that don't have this problem, right? But with the smaller ones, there hasn't been a company where CSP was an issue and I thought there's a CSP. For some of those companies, when there is a CSP in the front end, you can assume that there is going to probably be CSP in the back too, but that also turns out to be not true in some cases. So there is a graph I would like to do. Is the more you F around, the more you find out.
Yeah.
And honestly,
that's great.
That's what I've done with bug bounties, dude. With like Blind XSS, the more you fuck around, the more you find out. So you have nothing to lose to do that. You have nothing to lose to go report yourself as a spam or as a fraud, or your whatever it is. Like reporting, for example, is a big one of those things. You're not gonna. It's not gonna hurt. The only thing you have is to gain. Worst case is you lose your account, you make another one, dude.
That makes sense. And then from the CSS or CSP front, I'm wondering if it would make sense ever to submit more benign Blind XSS payloads, like an image tag or like a style tag or something that's not necessarily going to get caught in the script source area of the CSP. And I know recently Gareth Hayes and the Portswigger team released a sort of a blind CSS injection framework where you can exfiltrate, all of the contents of the inputs and text areas and stuff like that. Do you have any theories on that? Do you have any experience with non-JS executed blind XSS?
The thing with non-JS executed is sometimes you only have one shot to get this Blind XSS to fire.
That's true.
I think you both know I like to gamble once in a while, and I would rather just gamble on the XSS popping up than worrying about CSP, because my only worry with that is if I get an image tag, for example, to pop up and whatever it is, right? Then you have to prove to them that you also have JS to work. And I don't want to go down that path of having to go through triage and telling them why this is vulnerable and then explain to that engineer why this is vulnerable. Some companies don't get it. So I'm going to gamble the fact that the JavaScript is going to execute and I have no CSP issues. And if I do, then screw it. I don't get paid for it. And I just never know.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Well, that was a positively intriguing conversation surrounding Blind XSS. I'm very interested in this, and I had a phase of I'm finding a lot of Blind XSS, and then I stopped looking for it. And then it's great to talk with people, about these sort of vulnerability types, because it gets you re-excited for it again. And I know there was a phase where everyone was kind of putting them in their user agent, and then all of the freaking WAFs and stuff started blocking everybody, and it was this is just kind of a pain, and it fell off the map for me. But this is definitely something I'm going to reintegrate into my workflow again.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think I don't think Blind XSS is going to go anywhere for as long as XSS is around. I don't think the blind ones are going to go anywhere. So it's still an issue. I just want to preface that if you are looking for XSS, it's better to just use your own Blind XSS payload than just a vanilla exploit, because it also allows you to track and everything else. So it just makes your life easier.
So just for the listeners, because we had that all over the place in that conversation, the setup that you've got is a JS file that exfils data out. Yep. You stole that from the mandatory payload or whatever.
Hunter.
Yeah, XSS right. Hunter. And then you've got a PHP file, a custom PHP file that will parse that out on your own server, break that into a Correct. Report, hit a Discord callback, and that report is hidden behind basic auth or whatever, so nobody can just log in and see the report.
Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. I'll try to see if I can send you a visual so you can also put it in the at the bottom right here somewhere.
Yeah, I would love to do that. That sounds like a really good system and something that would be really worthwhile doing. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask about that specific thing is as far as customizations to the payload goes, are you exfiltrating local storage and anything you can get access to beyond the normal payload, or?
Xcillion has been trying to push me to do that a lot more. I haven't done any local storage stuff. Mine is
I can send you mine.
That'd be cool. But yeah, mine is the only thing that I have on there is I modify at the bottom. I sometimes have like an alert sometimes, or also I have it like for mobile apps, I have it dump stuff specific for that app. But no, the vanilla itself is just commented out though. Like I take it out sometimes, or I put it back on, or I comment it out, whatever it is. But the reason why I want to tell you guys that, again, use this with everything that you test for XSS wise, because it helps you track all your vulns. So if you want to go back to them and see if you can bypass them, you have that in the context of other applications, devices. There's been a time where it happened on a device and I only had one shot at this happening on the device. Like it popped up on an actual like physical device. It wasn't a mobile app. It wasn't actual like hardware. It popped up on there, right? And I couldn't modify the payload, but guess what? Because it was my JavaScript file, I could modify it all I wanted to. So that gives you a huge advantage. The whole thing with XSS is sometimes you get one shot. If it happens on a device, for example, you can't modify that, but you can modify your JavaScript payload. So keep that in mind when you do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was excellent with regards to Blind XSS. I'm hype about that. And the last thing that we wanted to cover, because I know we're into the hour and a half mark here, but the intriguing ones always go a bit long. We wanted to discuss going the extra mile on a bug bounty program to set up your environment. And this is something that we talk about on the pod quite a bit. We say, pay the extra money to go and get the premium feature, go through the rigorous sign up process you need to get everything set up. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience with that and why that's such a pivotal part of your methodology?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times like going the extra mile could be the premium. It could be so like I know a lot of people are scared of like, oh, I don't want to give him my ID because what if it gets hacked? Like I get that. Like I'm with you, but there's been times when I've like ID verified myself and I've gone open up to so much more stuff. I've sat on like onboarding calls. I've sat on like QA calls, like the customer service calls. You name it, dude. Like it helps. The other thing is like it also goes as far as like customizing your instance, right? Like some of these companies allow you to like configuring everything, or styling everything, and there's all of these. Like the more you give them, unfortunately, that's the reality of it. The reason, first of all, there's two things. One, they want your money or they want your data, right? Like they want your money because you want to purchase something, so you pay them. They open up more stuff. Sometimes it's expensive, so you can't pay for it. You can ask the companies, I'll give it to you. But then the other one is like, sometimes I want you to verify. Like Airbnb is a big one. You can't be a host without giving them your ID and stuff. A lot of hackers stop at that phase because I don't want, what if the company gets hacked? I don't want them to have my information. I don't want them to have my social. But you have to do those things because it opens up a lot of more stuff. But also keep in mind of like, again, I want to say the whole like the ROI of your time. If a company is maybe giving you 1,000 for a critical, maybe not worth it unless you're like, ask instead of, you're gonna maybe go for a quantity of criticals, then that is worth it. But if a company's like 25K max or even 10K max, right? That is still worth it.
Serious
that is
money.
The return in your time. There was a company that I hacked on that required me to send them a bunch of letters. Like I had to actually ship letters to them. And I spent like 3 days at the post office for this company, dude.
Oh my gosh.
I did it and it yielded out a really good bug, right? my tax documents right now, every year I get them, has a script tag inside of it. Like, because I went into this company that has my taxes and a bug bounty program, I paid them to do my taxes 1 year. I did all that stuff, right? I've gone as far as like opening retirement accounts with particular companies.
No way, that's amazing.
So like, it's not that I'm like, I'm trying to, I think about it, I go, oh, I'm going to retire. I'm going to open a retirement account, right? Who should I do it with? I think about these companies that are big. Do they have a bug bounty program that I can also test out? Right? Yeah. There's also, you want to invest money, like all these different things. Like, think about it. Like, it's always the mentality of how you are a hacker too.
I'll never forget this time where you and I were collaborating on a target where you could open up a credit card with this target, and you gave me access to your credit card. You're like, here, just log into my account.
I had a credit card.
Yeah.
I had their most expensive credit card. I had their checking account. And like 2 other services with him too, dude. And I didn't open up their most expensive credit card because I wanted it. It was because of that event, dude.
Yeah, and
I really wanted to see what that company had.
And I was like, dude, why the heck are you doing this? But at the same time, I was telling you like about all of these, benefits I was getting from signing up for these, credit cards and then, doing the point hacking thing. And you're like, bro, if we find one bug, you're going to get so much more value out of this than all of these like credit card hacking points things you're doing.
The maximum thing you pay, the maximum you pay for a credit card is like $700 a year. Yeah. 700 is probably the one that I pay the most. The maximum bounty you can get from a company that size is what, like 15-20K?
Yeah, for sure, at least.
Right. So I mean, also like the chicken count is free, so who cares? The credit card, I wanted that credit card at some point, and then the program pushed me. But those are just like things to think about, right? Like, if you're making an order with a company that's a bug bounty program, think of like, oh, what else can I do with this? So yeah, that's like the biggest thing to it, man. Like, you just gotta think about like, I'm gonna make this decision for my personal life. Obviously, don't base it all on your bug bounty experience, but if you have the option and you think, you're deciding between 2 companies, one has a bug bounty program, I'm gonna go with that one so I can also test it out.
Yeah. So you can test it, and also just because it's going to be more secure as well. Like people are in there testing on it every day, so there's value to that. Ben, dude, this has been legendary, man. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this knowledge. And I'm so glad to see the, completed rise from the low lows to the high highs after doing, $500,000 bug bounty and really crushing the video scene and seeming much more happy and stable. And it's really inspiring, man.
Yeah, of course. And kudos to you guys for, making such a good podcast and staying consistent and bringing, so many amazing guests.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me, and I'm excited to see what else you guys put out.
For sure. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Yeah. That's the pod.
Peace.